as well as I want to thank you for sharing this time with me. I always like to start with a example of my appreciation, because I really do enjoy tabletop. I really do enjoy, even in this medium, the opportunities to actually play. Today is the following in the denouement of nothing more than a fox like 100,000 other foxes. This is the one shot specifically for Marcus Farmer, one of their founding members of the troop that are taking place and running rampant through Gary. We open the eyes of our stage on Marcus busily working in the farmer's market. One text comes in, followed by another, and then before long, as has become the usual, there is a knocking upon the door, alerting him that Combe has in fact arrived.
Okay, with a quick peek at the security cameras, I make sure that he's arrived alone, unfollowed, and unaccompanied. And then I go to the door and I open it, greeting him. Regent Combe, thanks for coming.
It is my pleasure. I look forward to seeing how much progress you've made with the small bit of material provided. I do apologize for my tardiness, but unfortunately familial issues required my attentions.
Familial issues I can understand. Dealing with my little group, it's almost like a sitcom some days, I swear to God.
Hopefully not quite as varied as most sitcoms are, and hopefully as easily rectified. After all, there's quite a lot of things you can do in 22 minutes. So, show me what progress you've made.
I lead him over to the table and I show him the skin laid out. It's been treated so that it's very supple, easy to work with right now. Any imperfections or weird seam points or anything like that have been worked around, and I've lightly marked off with charcoal the cleanest area of what I assume to be the total book length. If the spine were open and the book were laid flat on its face, I tried to mark off a little extra of the cleanest, best portion of the skin. Then I show him the jars. I said, I did take the time to make up some curatives and some chemical mixtures, all organic, nothing weird, but it's to treat the skin after we've put it to its use so it becomes stronger, so that wear and tear isn't a long-term problem for you. Here I have some salted hot oil. We can lay that on the skin after it's set, after it's put on the boards, and it'll tighten and harden it up so it won't crack, and it won't, if you hit it with something, it won't crease or break. Basically, it's a treatment they used to use for making boiled leather armor. And then here I have a couple of examples of inks that I've made for regular leather. And we may have to darken them to get the same effects, but I have a red that uses blood for its tint, for its pigment. I also have a charcoal near black, if you want a very dark cover. And I also have a white ash asper, which will give you a very light color. But like I said, all of them are made with just tree, sap, some honey, salt, so nothing that would give it a chemical binding. I've also prepared some old style glues for attaching the binding and the spine to the pages, based on an old Egyptian formula that I found. So that's just honey, flour, a little salt, and water.
I see. You have been very dedicatedly busy.
Well, I like to do good work. And admittedly, I'm not trained in the occult or magic or any of that. But there's an amazing amount of stuff out there that you can look up. And I have found that most things that are meant to be magically attuned in some way are meant to be as natural as possible. So I try to stick with that throughout.
I see. I am glad that so much of the more hermetic aspects have been placed out there for easy view. One of the the predominant factor and reason for me being here doing the working is because there are certain protections that I can offer by being near at hand, and as well as certain attunements that are necessary for it to be a proper reflection of your best work. How much do you understand as to what a grimoire actually is?
Well, like I said, I was only able to view publicly available, a little bit on the dark web, but that's usually just book people trying to sell old books, so they talk it up. But the definitions I found were grimoires were meant to be tomes of either knowledge, wisdom, or magic. And the three ideas overlap. But my understanding was a spell grimoire was meant for a master to hold specific secrets that he wanted kept for himself. Knowledge and wisdom grimoires were meant to be like training manuals, ideas, principles that a master would know that he would pass on to somebody else.
I see. There is quite a bit available. All of those things are true, and all of them bind you to a certain perspective. A grimoire at its base is just that, an educational manual, a path forward, a way through the malaise and miasma that is our lives, especially such as we are, inhabiting the very abhorrence of nature, being walking, living, pseudo-living vacuums upon the world. This, much like many of the others, would be both instructional as well as protective. The creation, at least as we are going to move forth, will bind the very will and need for peace. And as long as the grimoire and its various ingredients are not sundered from this world, it will ease diplomatic relations between all parties within range of it. What we are creating here is a treaty and instructional text for moving forth to maintain the peace. It will have, of course, its secrets. No magic is magic without that aspect. However, what we will bind within the very pages, within the flesh of this grimoire, will ensure that we have something lasting, some semblance of peace, some semblance of understanding. And while, yes, moments will arise where tensions will flare and violence will very much happen, the pact of this grimoire will keep it from being as devastating as it is currently, or as current as we can importune the creation of such. The material necessary isn't all that easy to come by without some grievous harm to the public at large.
So what you're saying is this will be like a treaty between parties in paper. In fact, the written word, people sign at the bottom, they agree to stipulate to whatever's included. But it will also be imbued so that people near it will feel driven to live up to the treaty.
A very close approximation of what I said. We will be binding a spirit, a greater incarna, into the very flesh of this grimoire. This incarna, which already exists here, will ensure that the devastation wreaked from violence inside our city will not reach the level of immediate destruction to all. It will hold and maintain as much of the peace as it is able. And I am not quite sure if you are aware as to just how much that might be.
Well, in the last few days, I've been attacked, almost kidnapped, and shot. So I'm beginning to understand.
Yes. And it is a desperate thing, but I do believe that we need such protections. Our little city has grown in violence far in excess of its current state. And none of those with any semblance of power understand doing what is necessary for the common good, despite whether it follows our own ideologies or not. We have the tower, as always, insisting. We have the anarchs, as always, insisting. And between the two forces, everything else falls to chaos. Haven't you had enough turmoil?
Well, I certainly have. After being ignored for 13 years, it's a little hard to watch the kings let all the soldiers kill each other for nothing.
Yes, and don't you find it a bit odd that both former leaders, those who upheld the status quo, simply disappeared?
I keep wondering about Jungler and Modius, about their disappearances and the timing of it. The Vanguard shows up almost the minute they're gone. The Anarchs are in a state of disarray where their rank and file are doing things without talking to their power base. And their power base is off trying to start Beirut in the middle of Indiana. So it's like somebody knew this was a trigger point in time and decided just to pull the trigger to see what would happen.
Yes, unfortunately, that very much, I fear, is the case. There's no such thing as coincidence. And the fact that Caldwell has become more active within the Anarch community, and the fact that after 10 years of slowly aligning their strengths, these members of this vanguard have chosen to act. Sharp has bound them in alliance towards the goal of the Camarilla taking full control of the area.
So it's this man Sharp who's running the leashes on those particular hounds.
Yes. And I curse myself for not being far more aware when I arrived that they had already set up base. I knew that a time would come when Modius, in his state of absence, his state of being preoccupied elsewhere, would come to some ill. I did not foresee that it would become such a thing with he and Juggler would be removed from the board. And while Sharp is a new residence and only appears at dramatically appropriate moments, the others have been gathering strength and replacing supply lines, inserting themselves into the community.
Pretty deep anymore. I have figured out the bidder.
Well, that's to be expected. Aren't you working with Silk towards some enterprise?
Yes, but I'm also work for Anarchs. And
were you seen in public with Silk?
Just the once.
That's all it takes for a Toreador. How many people were watching? How much of a scene did she create with you?
Did you hear about the depot?
Yes, but there's
we were there that night.
So you managed to, in a short, single instance, catch the eyes of nearly everyone with a hand in any disreputable business.
Yeah, talking to Silk. Okay, the laughter hurts a little, I won't lie. That hurts. But I didn't know who she was when I made the meeting. I also didn't know that some bloody great beast was going to try to tear the place apart that night.
Almost as if it was planned that way.
Oh, yes. But that would have to have been a leak on her end. My end is...
Does it have to be a leak or merely just drawing everyone's attention?
Well...
Using what's there.
Yes, somebody on the spot could have said, hey, this will be a fun thing to do. And poke the biggest tiger in Gary. While the prettiest girl in the Toreador showed up, that would definitely draw attention from everywhere. I might just be splash damage and all of that. But the same time the Anarchs were here, the bridge right up the street, there were a couple of SUVs watching my place. And Mason took a friend to that, went after them, and they decided instead of being seen, they decided to shoot up my neighborhood and hit me because that's the kind of luck I have. So, I mean, I don't know a lot, but in my way of thinking, that feels like a tower surveillance because Sabat doesn't watch things, they burn things down, and Anarchs were at my front door at the time. Feels like the tower was watching me, just happened to be there at the same time as the Anarchs, and all hell broke loose.
I am aware of your reputation, Marcus, and it takes quite a bit for, pardon the potential effrontery, but for such a mundane creator to reach my attention and be worthy of the necessary skill needed to move forward. So if you've reached a relatively street reclusive individual's attention, how much more attention do you think you might have stirred with those who are more aware, more savvy as to what happens?
I'm beginning to understand that in the great realm of pawns, I'm being looked on as a unique piece.
Yes, well, they've already begun cornering the market as to every other facet the depot offers the city. From the base self-defense weaponry and combat tools to the harshly obtained blood. Salacious is and has become a place of note where one can feed in style, where one can feed in luxury, where one can hunt without having to risk failure. Silk's hospitality has been there for years and is only now coming to greater knowledge and greater awareness for the city at large, which is one of the major products the depot offers, the other being items of less than legal provenance, and that has been taken up by aces.
So they have one factor dealing in the blood trade and one factor dealing in illicit trade of objects.
Yes, and then there are the black market items of beauty and entertainment, which Cassandra is moving into out of her beauty supply warehouse for hot and fencible items. What else does that leave the depot the central source for? Drugs. And who happens to be from, pardon the stereotype, those environs where they can be grown quickly and easily and transported with skill? David.
Yeah, that would be the four corners of Power and Gary, because it certainly isn't industry anymore.
No, it is not. And removing the depot's central presence, making it less than an Elysium, making it a viable place to assault and affront, taking away the last large landmark of Gary's past, becoming those institutions themselves. How long do you believe the Anarchs might stand against such a thing?
Well, they wouldn't be able to stand it the way Juggler and Modius had worked it out. Any kind power base would fall apart within a year. Any kindred power base, depending on how hard it fights back, maybe a decade.
Decade? Not hardly. You seem to forget they're still Sharp and his unnatural success rate regards to claiming cities, reclaiming cities, and fighting on behalf of the tower.
I haven't met Sharp, but
no one knows where he rests his head, yet everyone knows he is about. No one knows when he might appear, but everyone knows he's about. How do you establish dominance?
Well, dominance, easy. Among kindred, the easiest factor is fear and power.
And what better way to instill fear than having communication flow only towards you, where you find those you wish to speak to when you choose to speak to?
So, unless Evelyn can match Juggler in what Juggler did, she doesn't have more than 3 years. And if Chicago becomes actively involved, the Anarchs have as much time as the kind do.
Yes. Hence the reason why the need for this grimoire, to hold the storm already in motion at bay as long as possible.
Evelyn, find a new center to hold.
Exactly that. And with Evelyn, unfortunately, I don't see that as being viable.
She seemed a little short on trigger pull. She has made fairly aggressive overtures towards Silk already.
Yeah, it's always the case. You pick the wrong person, the wrong target. But she has been doing so, running the Anarchs for the last decade. Juggler merely wearing the crown and putting on a show of antagonizing Modius. Evelyn has always been the organizational genius behind allowing them to stand as long as they have. She is at her wit's end. Imagine working in anonymity of all sorts. No maker's mark, no hidden whispers of your name, yet your production being what's touted under another's. Ghostwriting the very real Anarch movement here in Gary. How frustrated would you be?
I would, if I were a seeker of power in that way, I would be going a little nuts right now.
Better yet, let's make it a little more personal. Imagine, if you will, your maker's mark was touted as someone else's.
Oh, I'd burn their house down around their ears.
Yes. And that's the point to which Evelyn has risen, because for years, she is the reason the Anarchs have been as successful as they are. She's speaking for Juggler on the streets. She keeping the Anarchs as much in line as she was able, including working with those few scattered Anarchs throughout Chicago, staging the few successful attacks that weren't catastrophic, staging the few instances of outright actual rebellion.
So the politics of old.
Yes.
When I say of old, I mean 3 months ago.
Yes.
Juggler as a figurehead and Modius as a compliant half-prince.
Yes. Thankfully, he was focused elsewhere and not realizing the operational genius at work counter to him.
So Evelyn was the clockwork behind Juggler's face.
Yes.
Pushing, pulling, and taking advantage of Modius's lack of interest or awareness or whatever it was.
Yes.
But now she doesn't have Juggler anymore. She doesn't have the pretty face. And she isn't dealing with Modius anymore.
Yeah.
So she's taken it on the chin twice.
Yes.
She's fighting a strong tower presence versus a weak tower presence. And she's fighting them without the tool of Juggler being there to rally the troops.
Yes.
Well, it is going to suck to be her.
It will. She needs strong allies and stronger advisors to keep the explosion from happening, to disarm the very real bomb that she can be. Imagine working towards a goal and having the table flipped at the last moment of the game. Having your victory taken simply because of who you are, finally coming to the realization of anyone else.
She doesn't even have any real control inside the Anarchs right now, does she? I mean, without Juggler, there's got to be a percentage of those rebels that only were kept in line by the fact that Juggler was there.
Yes, she has more acclaim and more actual power outside of Gary, as under her own name.
Okay, so this book is very important.
Yes. So is finding a way to maintain the semblance of the former status quo, the balance between. Because if Sharp is successful in ensuring the overthrow of what was and the tower holding full sway, you do realize places such as yours will either be destroyed or being forced into service.
Yeah, I studied enough history to know that nobody wields power like a new king.
Correct. Especially if we don't even know who this king may actually be.
I mean, we don't know what... I certainly don't know whether Sharp plans to work towards the tower's dominance and then step aside as a backyard advisor or to take the crown himself. Nobody's claimed praxis yet, right? Nobody said, I'm the guy.
No one has, which makes things all the worse for us all, as there is no hand more dastardly than the one you know is there and cannot see. Sharp is a soldier. He is an agent provocateur. He is not a king. He's not even a baron. There is someone else to whom he dances, who designs and strums the chords of this tune. And Sharp is his most potent weapon, gathering and using the resources that are here, usurping what control lies on the streets from the anarchs as a whole. And we still don't know whom that might be.
That is never good, especially for someone like me. I'm sure you've looked into my background and have found out as much as probably I know. I do come from a clan, but I don't have a clan. My blood didn't breed true. I'm broken. Or that's what they called me.
Only if you want to be.
I later learned that there's an actual term for it, caitiff. But my understanding is that among the tower, people like me, kindred like me, are not well looked upon. So any hope to independence I would have would not exist under the tower, simply because of my blood and my lack of contact. My clan has disowned me.
Yes, well, there are fates far worse than that.
Yes, I have heard of other clans where membership and active enrollment are worse than being forgotten. But in a city fully controlled by the tower, the farmer's market would not be mine. It would just be where I work.
Correct.
And that's not why I made the market. The factory is my home. It isn't just where I make things. I live here. This is my safe space, and it would no longer be that under the tower.
No, it'd be safe as long as you toed the line, as if you jumped to the correct tune and to the correct hoops. Sadly, your associates don't find my entreaties and my giving the truth and instead of making you jump forward, instead of keeping things from you. They think that it is a ploy. Honesty is never a ploy, though unfortunately I understand why they...
Well, they're all older than I am, and they know things I don't, but they've seen things that color how they feel. I was abandoned, so I didn't see anything. After my time with the Ventru, after they saw me as trained enough not to get them in trouble, they kicked me loose. The only thing I've seen is that Ventru are a giant pain in the ass. I have never seen the tower overrun a city. I've never seen the anarchs take down somebody. I've never seen the Sabbat burn a city to the ground for fun. So I don't have those memories to color things for me. They keep being asked by various and sundry powerful people. They've been kidnapped and taken away and led into back rooms to have a private conversation. And they've all been asked, who are you with? No one's asked me. Not once, not even them. It's never occurred to them to ask who I'm allegiant to.
Well, that much is obvious. You're allegiant to yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't have existed in this gray space between one or the other.
And I operate in this space by choice. The tower doesn't really want me, and the anarchs wouldn't use me. They wouldn't invite me to their parties, so I wouldn't go, so inviting me would be a moot point, but still, the invitation would not be forthcoming, because I'm not a fighter. I'm not a rebel. I'm not a tower of the line. And as my trainers 2 decades ago said, I have all the etiquette of a wet dog in a china shop. So I'm quite content in my happy little middle gray space. But if Sharp wants to do what you say he wants to do, I'm one of the pieces he needs to figure out how to take control of or eliminate.
Sounds apropos to being watched, doesn't it?
That's why I think the tower was involved with the sedans and minivans that have been parking on the bridge. That strikes me as what they're doing. And I honestly think Silk inadvertently stumbled upon my name and decided to investigate me with her little project, but now has been told to actively deal with me one way or the other.
It is interesting that you consider them, just because they are serving the same cause, that they are exactly the same.
Well, I think they're serving the same cause, and in this one instance, the two are working to a similar goal with differing outcomes. I'm a maker. I make things out of scratch that can't be traced. I make things that are uniquely whole and outside of any tracking. There's no paperwork to back it up. And I can make just about anything. I'm not bragging when I say that. Short of nuclear bombs and space rockets, I can make it in this room. I think Silk sees me as a very interesting asset, and Sharp sees me as a part of the city that if he controls it will give him better control. So they both see me as an asset, but for different reasons, and they're both greedy about it.
Yes, Silk can seem greedy, but unfortunately for everyone, of the members that I've met, she is by far the most kind. She is the most open to another alternative way of achieving the goal. And sadly, it seems as if your friend Mason, Mr. McGinnis, does not sit well with her. I think
aren't they like two cats in the same room? Is that...
I believe she expects more of him than he understands.
And I talked to Mason about Silk due to an issue with a friend of mine who was kind, and Silk, and just his body language reminded me of a cat when a new cat has walked into the room. His hair was definitely up. His tail was switching.
That's to be expected. No one likes to be outshone.
I mean, he's probably of all of us, the most subtle. But if I ever thought that Mason thought of me the way he looked when he was thinking of Silk, I would move to another town and change my name.
That is good to know.
He definitely has bad feelings about it. With Ben, there's so much raw honesty with her, it's easy to tell what she thinks about people all the time. And admittedly, it's a little hard to deal with somebody who looks about the same age I do but treats me like a pet. But I understand why she does it. And there are times I've appreciated it a great deal. But in the interest of what you're trying to accomplish, which the more you tell me, the more I like the idea, I think moving ahead with a grimoire in all due haste would be a good idea. None of the other projects that I have going on right now are going to sidetrack me all that much. So if we can get the materials together, I've done most of the layout work for the boards. I can press the paper in a night. Well, in a day. I set it up at night, and then the next sundown, I'll be able to take it apart and start gluing things together. So you said there were many more materials to incorporate?
Yes, each page, it must be the skin of a different man.
Okay, and have you procured the pages required?
I am in the midst of obtaining as such. Unfortunately, my familial responsibilities require some due effort. There was a theft in a temple, a chantry of ours. The theft of which caused the spirits and other beings kept at bay to be released into the ether.
Well, magic things aside, I was told that other things existed other than us. The Wukong, of course, they made a passing reference at race at some point, but didn't go into detail. But that sounds like it's a pretty big problem. But if you can tell me the size of a page and how many pages there will be, I can prepare the rest of the book and be ready for the pages when they arrive.
That is the difficult part, unfortunately. I don't want to arouse your suspicions or cause any fear in you, but this project needs roughly 166 and a half pages. Each page, of course, accounting for 4, but that's how many we shall need.
So we're talking a fairly thick tome.
It must be. The size of the incarnate that we will bind demands more space than a lesser would require.
Doing the math in my head, that many pages made out of that material, the book will be almost 4 inches thick.
Yes.
I'm assuming almost a full foot across, possibly 18 inches tall.
Roughly 18 inches. I'm pressing the bone that I've managed to obtain now. I'll bring those to you for the binding, for the backing, shortly.
Okay, and for the cover boards, there should be a hardening material, a wood, or do you just want to use the bone in a laminate for that?
I defer to your specific knowledge, but usually it is only bone, though the final product is considerably less finished than what we're hoping to do here.
Okay, so I'll make up there's a couple of hardening laminates we can use. We take the bones down to thin layers, lay them out as if they were wood, pour the laminate atop, and it will make a flattened surface of bone and laminate. And then the spine, we can just lay the bone into the spine on the glue along the back of the pages. Bind the pages in catgut and gold thread.
No, unfortunately, it must be humans to do.
Oh, you're going to have to procure that. I can get just about any kind of animal sinew, but human is not something they cover in my sources.
I'm surprised. Most of the material, at least the smaller portions of the material, are easily obtained at the depot.
Well, Adam currently is not on my friends list. So showing at the depot would be problematic until things are clarified, and I'm trying to find a safe space to do that in.
I see. Perhaps I can offer a word of support.
If you could put in a good word with Adam for me, I would be very, very grateful.
That is something that I believe I may be able to do. I will, now that I've shared a bit more of my truth and you've partaken, I do and must ask, is there any way that we can obtain the blood of your coterie members? As a gift, I'd like to ensure that your piece is worked into the fabric of Gary as well as mine own. And while their disrespect and distrust would provoke a smaller person into more directly harmful actions, I believe instead of taking a stance against them, that perhaps offering a small gift may assuage some of their concern.
Well, I can tell you that from what I've read in magic, the old adage, so above, so below. Anything you want affected has to be included into something. Every version, fictional, non-fictional, apocryphal, has said that, and I understand the concept. It's an engineering principle, as well as a magical one, I found out. So I would be willing. Ben might be convinced. Mason might be convinced. Joshua would be slightly problematic. It's the sanctity of the body form seems to be a big deal to his group. Mamela would be the hardest to convince.
Well, he seems a dangerous sort. Is there any way we can obtain a portion of his vitae without perhaps eliciting a negative response?
When you say a portion, do you mean drops? Whole pints? Just drops?
Well, it's all that we need. A few drops.
I think in the course of the way things are going, it might be likely. If we check the trash, we might find some of Josh's blood right now because he recently went through major surgery right here, and my blood adorns several locations in the factory right now after being shot.
I see. Who else was injured that evening?
It was me and Mason took bullets.
Did you do so near here? In his choice to attack those on the bridge, how close to here was that?
It was just along the street. We were walking up the street during the big rainstorm. So
the rain may be a problem. However, could you show me where?
Absolutely. And I check my watch to make sure my kind neighbors are probably asleep and lead them outside. I go up and I show them where Mason took his round. And then we would have taken cover to the north side of the street. and come up. So there would be his blood from further up, about halfway up the block. He would have gotten to before they opened fire, and then he turned and retreated. I took rounds about a quarter of the way up, found cover behind something, probably bushes, and slinked my way up along the sidewalk and the lawns.
Okay. And as you walk and you outline the rough makeup of what took place and where it took place on the street, how it happened and had transpired, everyone running for cover and moving out of sight and making their way back. As you all walk, he removes a small, roughly 2 fingers long, curved dagger and scores the center of his palm. And as he whispers just beneath recognizable volume, his blood wells up into the palm of his hand, as well as a sense of danger for you, because it is very clear that his beast has crawled closer to the surface. And the calm, measured speaking that you've been privy to several instances before becomes a little rushed. I see. This is quite unusual. Such open displays of violence and such a calm. And as the blood wells into a pool, you watch as shadowy tendrils of vitae rise from the street. With his right hand, he slips the blade back into his bag and produces a small bowl, roughly the size of a soda can in terms of diameter. And he holds the bowl aloft as droplet after droplet of the vitae in the area pools shadow-like into that bowl. And you were the only... Ben was the only one that wasn't injured, correct?
No, Ben tackled Mason to the ground to keep him from going any further, and then they opened fire. I think it was a combination of the storm, the lightning, and suddenly seeing 5 people rushing out of the house they were watching that kind of freaked out the surveillance team, and instead of running away, they opened fire.
It's a tactically sound action to keep anyone from being able to follow them. I guess they didn't care as much for your neighbors as we should, as being members of the city.
Thank God vampires have good eyesight, because they didn't manage to hit any of the houses, and the storm hid the sound.
Was Mason injured prior to this?
Mason... No, I don't think he was injured prior to this. Mamela was captured. Oh, some of Mamela's blood might be on the car. That big ugly Lincoln in the factory?
Yes.
He smashed his foot into the steering wheel when he was captured by the tower people, by the Vanguard.
David and Cassandra can be particularly heavy-handed at times. Not quite as much as aces, but far more than myself.
Well,
and Silk. It is unfortunately their way.
Well, it was their second attempt. They tried to grab Josh, the doctor, the night before. They seemed to be asking questions about loyalties more than anything else. They were worried about the doctor being Sabbat or Anarch, and they wanted to know where Mamela's loyalties lie, and
you all have responded violently to each and every instance of being questioned. That is interesting.
Well, Mamela let himself be captured. They took down his car, and instead of fighting back, he just let them take him. Josh fought back and ran away because he didn't know what was going on. And Josh is a doctor, not a soldier. He doesn't understand tactics or surveillance or counterintelligence or any of that. Not that I do either. I would have probably fought back as well. I, on the other hand, would have probably been captured, even if fighting back.
So Mamela is an ex-soldier?
He said things that lead me to think that he was a soldier type among us Fangs down south before he came up here, and has every intention of not becoming one when he's up here.
I see. That explains some of his behaviors. Well, I believe that we've obtained as much blood as we can, as much vitae as we can from this location. Let's try once more in your factory.
In the factory, the garbage can near the bookshelves holds the cloth and everything I tried to use to help Josh when he came back messed up. And the Lincoln probably has Mamella's blood. So I lead him back to the factory and show him the mark on the dent in the steering wheel where Mamella smacked his head, and the garbage can where the blood rags still exist.
As you lead him around the factory, it is a clear amount of effort that is triggering all sorts of less than positive responses within him as he works, but still more blood, shadowy tendrils, and remnants of vitae pool into the small bowl. Taxed so much so that droplets of sweat cover his brow, and unfortunately, like all liquid matter of kindred, there is a pinkish hue of the vitae that makes such things possible.
Cone, are you okay?
It is considerably more taxing doing this so many days removed. I didn't know that this instance happened so very long ago. I miscalculated the last rain. But it is done. And with that, he reaches into his bag and pulls out a cover to go over the bowl. The bowl itself and its cover are clay pieces that fit and slot into each other. It is clear that it was not machine tooled at all, was in fact hand carved from a single stone. Somehow in the sealing of it, the immediate scent of vitae disappears and is almost hermetically sealed, how snugly they fit and slide into one another. He places this back into his bag and takes a moment to compose himself, removing a small napkin from his bag and daubing his brow and slicking his hair back into place. It takes a few moments, but he is once more as composed as he was upon entering.
After seeing what you can do with everything you just did, if you want to get rid of the napkin, the forge is lit. You can just throw it in there and it'll burn it up.
No, it's quite all right. There are other ways to make sure that what I am doesn't leave my presence. I will obtain the bone pressings for the backings and the spine of the grimoire. In the doing, over the next few days, I will also reach out to the management at the depot. I have a few associates amongst the Mayhews, so potentially that will be more than enough assistance to ensure that you have some peace.
Well, I also want to make amends. Make it very clear to Adam especially. I know he put out effort before the bad things happened on my behalf, and I've set aside funding to recompense him. I don't expect this to be forgotten as if it never happened. I will pay my due. I just want him to realize that I didn't tear his place up, and I had nothing to do with the crazy. I am, as I always have been, a small-time operator that occasionally uses his space to make a deal.
And you're one of the few who have not opened a stall at the bazaar. I'm sure that he will take that into consideration. If there is a task that he would like you to, in lieu of, or in association with the financial recompense, is that something that may be up your alley?
Oh, yeah. If he needs me to cut him a favor as well as make him some financial amends, I'm perfectly willing.
Excellent.
I have always appreciated the existence of the depot in allowing me to do business without bringing people to my home. And I'm willing to pay for that ability.
That is good to know indeed. I will pass along the message.
I would like to point out the one thing that you did to me, the one little misdirect that you let me follow down a rabbit hole. I have made further inquiries to the Turn Regent.
Yes.
And I have discovered that you let me believe, probably to your own amusement and nothing else, but still, you let me believe that it had something to do with the tower and you were a sub-prince of some kind. I have found out that it is a wizard term only. It's only among you, what's it called, Tremere. It's only among you Tremere that the term regent has true meaning.
That is not entirely true. I did find it humorous that you assumed that my title as regent was one and the same as leadership of the city at large. Your conflation of the two terms, while incorrect, is not wrong.
Well, it means you're the big boss of the wizards, right? I mean, the Tremere. You're Gandalf.
I don't wear hats, but I understand, and you fail to quite grasp what I'm telling you. My efforts on behalf of the tower are earnest. I am also part of the vanguard. My speaking for and with the rabble is also true and honest. I am also a believer in the rights of every kindred to rule themselves as they see fit. While the two are not mutually inclusive, they need not be mutually exclusive. Only a fool would take a hard stance against anyone, as we are all untrustworthy. We are all monsters.
So you are a vanguard.
Yes.
You're part of, I hate to call it anything else, but the word fits. You're part of that clique.
Yes. Do you know what the vanguard of the Camarilla is?
I would imagine that the vanguard of the Camarilla goes into a city that is without tower leadership to make tower leadership possible or judge a city unworthy of the tower's attention.
That is apropos and absolutely accurate. However, in this particular case, having lost my own city, having my own home be taken from me, when I learned of the Vanguard's intentions on Gary prior to Modius's disappearance, I made myself attractive in my offer to assist them as best I saw fit.
So you were a regent or a high wizard somewhere else.
I am the regent of Gary.
You are establishing yourself through the Vanguard as the regent, the head wizard here?
Yes. Through the Vanguard and through the Anarchs. I want them and have taught them both the full approximate scope of my abilities and why it is best to accept my offers of assistance versus my intentions for ill. They have both understood and accepted. As such, I am allowed to proceed with my goal of maintaining the peace and the balance. I have watched far too many cities fall, and I have no intentions of watching Gary fall further. The hellhole that it is now is no comparison to the hellhole that it will be if either the tower takes full control or the Anarchs take full control.
Well, so you're the reformists. You're like Martin Luther in the church.
Yes.
The Church of England and the Catholics are beating the crap out of each other, and here comes Martin Luther. I can get behind that concept.
Not many can, not even then. We saw how well that worked out.
Well, I went to school in the 20th century, so I have an advantage over a lot of the people you were talking to. So we complete the grimoire. You bring me the bones, I put together everything, then you bring me the pages, and I'll set up multiple presses so that when the paper arrives, I can treat it and make it paper from its source material quickly. That's going to add a little time to my original estimate because I thought I was just going to be using really old virgin, paper made from a specific kind of wood. But this different material is a different process. It'll take me a couple extra days to press it all out, but I can get it done within 5 days of getting the paper.
Yes. Well, as I obtain the necessary vellum so that we can proceed, your associates, your coterie members will need to be here as well. I have a very strong feeling that while I am able to keep both parties from clashing as violently as they will currently, in the process of summoning this greater spirit from the other side, there will be a conflagration of forces. There will be combat of all sorts taking place in and around the environment. Nature abhors a vacuum, and for a moment as we reach across the veil, there will be a vacuum here, and all of the things aligned against you and your coteries will come crashing against our defenses. And it's the other reason why I must be here as we compile the materia into the grimoire, as we cast deeply into the oblivion of beyond, into the maelstrom, and summon this spirit here and bind it to our grimoire. We will use the manpower to ensure that we complete our task.
Well, I can certainly make the coterie aware of what's needed to happen and that their presence is going to be needed. I know that they feel the need to protect our group as a whole. And in the completion of this, I'm going to be completely vulnerable. I won't be able to distract myself away from what I'm working on if it's going to be of a level needed for what you're going to do to it. It's like the difference between making a Casio watch versus a bespoke Swiss timepiece. I won't be able to distract myself or step away and have the piece come out the way we need it to. So I can impress upon them that need. There is one thing I would suggest, and I don't know whether, I will help as much as I can on my end, but there may be a need for you may not know this term, it's kind, but it is apropos. There may be a need for a come to Jesus meeting between you and Mamela.
I don't believe he would understand that term. I'm not sure he believes in anything except for what he can see.
Well, that's the term come to Jesus meeting means that you and he need to sit and have a meeting between yourselves, because his animosity is going to affect any effectiveness we have. And the project is important, so any animosity between the two of you is a bad thing. So maybe a time needs to be set aside for you and he to meet and talk and figure out a compromise of personalities and goals. Mamela is the most tower-oriented of all of us.
Let me see. Allow me the moment to speak with the powers that be at the depot and broker some peace there. After that task, then you can arrange a meeting between myself and Mamela.
Well, I'll definitely talk you up as a positive influence versus what we've dealt with the rest of the Vanguard, with Sharp and that little mansion they have up by the water, and Silk and her club. It honestly surprises me to learn that you are a member of that group because of the difference in the way you handle things.
It's in our differences that strength can be seen and utilized.
Well, and differences inside a group, I've always said that a mixture is stronger than a pure substance. Iron is iron, but steel will always win. And the same with any coterie or group or Vanguard. I see the differences being important. But the way he reacted to you the first time you met, I don't know whether there was something he saw that I didn't, or that he imagined that I didn't. I'll talk to him about finding peace in that thought process. And I think after he's met Sharp and he's met Silk, he's going to be a lot more welcoming to your method and your understanding and your purpose in all this. So I want there to be an understanding, because if all 6 or 7 of us are trapped in the factory working on this and there becomes a problem, I want his concentration to be on the problem and not on you.
I hope that will be the case.
So do I, because I mean, among our coterie, like you said, differences are important. And our coterie is just about as different as you can get. We have an old timer, we have Mason, who is his own thing. We have a soldier in Mamela, we have a maker, and we have a doctor. Some of the rarest things that exist in Kindred Society. None of us are power brokers except for Mason in his own little way. But we are all working together. And I think sure makes us stronger, just like you being a member of the Vanguard makes them stronger, because you have an actual vision. Silk seeks power for her own right. Sharp is, by all accounts, everything I've seen and heard, makes him out to be a pure mercenary.
Yes, that's the problem with zealots of his sort. He believes in the overarching ideals of the Foundation versus its independent usage where he is. So being trapped in a city would be hell for him. But championing the cause, that he believes in wholeheartedly. He believes in the right of the Camarilla. But that being the case, I must make haste. There are several other things I must accomplish. Your work so far is... And then he pauses, looking at the box. I've seen this bit of work, but I can't say a jewelry box is worth your attention.
This is part of our little group's act with Silk. She requested a box to hold a stone.
Really? A stone? A singular stone? I didn't know that she had jewelry or...
Yeah, it's a biggish stone, she said, and she wants to make a present of it. So I'm making the present box. And as is my tendency, I'm going all out. So, but...
A present box? Yeah.
Well, I've gone a little over the deep end on it, I won't lie. It's reinforced, it's metal infused. I haven't decorated it yet, but it's teak and mahogany. It's gonna have inlay. It's got a special little lock. I went a little crazy.
And these metal adornments aren't copper, are they?
There's a copper inlay inside the wood, so it won't be seen externally at all.
Really?
And then she said it's a present for an important person, so I said I'd make her the strongest box I could find and still make it look like it was all made out of wood. So it's hardwoods, it's mahoganies and teaks, a little English ironwood for a laminate inside. It would take more than a sledgehammer to open this box.
I see. And you are aware that those woods have natural properties to them?
I did look those up while I was doing research for you. I also came across some research about the uses of wood and the kinds of wood. English ironwood was used by druids to imbue strength in items.
Protective.
Teak and mahogany were both grounding, so they don't allow magical energies to penetrate or something like that. It was a vague reference that I found in a book by Aleister Crowley.
Dispersal and protection woods are what you're using to create a box with a copper inlay, which is typically designed to protect and disperse energies as well.
Yes, that I read in a book about alchemy.
I see. Did she tell you what this stone was?
She said it's a really big lodestone, like those magnet stones that they used to use to make compasses out of before they electrified iron to the poles. She said it's a big lodestone. So I figured anything encapsulating energy, and just, because I studied engineering, the copper I used is set up like a Faraday cage.
Are you sure she said a lodestone or the lodestone?
She didn't really go into any kind of detail on that. She just said...
You can't finish this box. Do not finish this box until I give you the okay.
Well, she's been putting me off on this box for days, so I imagine that I can play making this box out for weeks with her.
You don't understand. If she said the lodestone, it is a sundering stone. It will break nearly every bond you could imagine. Now, what are the coincidences that Silk, a tried and true member of the Vanguard, who have been forced to tolerate my presence because of my title and my skill, that they are seeking or have obtained the lodestone? It was last in Indianapolis, less than 2 hours drive from here.
So you're saying this is not just a big chunk of lodestone?
No, the lodestone is a sundering stone from the original city of us all, from the first city. It carries with it properties of sundering nearly every bond.
So like blood bonds? Like
blood bonds, bonding of spirits into grimoire, bondings of circles of protection, bondings of wards, bondings of one blood to another.
So what I'm making is the carrying case for a magical bomb of some kind.
Yes, very much so. If I am correct, hopefully I am not, I need to go speak with Silk immediately. If you will excuse me, Marcus, I must be going.
Absolutely. And if I need to go hide in a very deep hole, send me a text.
You'll know if things progress negatively.
I thank you for that.
And with that, he leaves. You've never seen him leave so quickly, even when having a less than positive interaction with Mamela. But the speed to which he takes away is admirably nearly as quickly as you've seen Mamela cross distances.
Well, crap.
And with that realization and that truth sitting before Marcus, we will draw a close to this particular scene in this one shot. I want to thank you. It's been great. I'm going to take care of a few other things, and hopefully it fills in a little bit more as to what's going on in the city at large.